Hey there, welcome back to Total Geek Live Baltimore Presents. I'm Baltimore, and today I'm bringing you The Watchmen. That's this great piece of art here. Alan Moore, Dave Gibbons, and John Higgins created this work. It's, Hugo Award winner. It's a fantastic, seminal piece of art. And, I'm sure most of you know a lot about this story, have read it, or maybe seen the movie or the series that came out recently, or even the new series Doomsday Clock, which is takes a lot from this. But this is the original. This is what it's based off of. Watchmen. It's a phenomenal work. It was created 1986 through 87 was when it was published, and if you were actually reading it as it was coming out, you might be quite frustrated because there was all significant delays in this being released. So, of course, with something like The Watchmen, it reads much better and more full in one complete setting read through. So we're lucky that we were able to have a collection of it so we can just read through the entire thing. And something that Alan Moore said is, this work is a lot better if you read it the fourth or the fifth time, because you're always picking up little things that were in there, intentional and sometimes unintentional, by the creators, that make the give it so much more depth and more meaning and more significance upon reading it, because you have your own conclusions you can bring to it. And one thing he was actually pretty vocal about is he created 4 or 5 viewpoints when working on this, so that each reader could decide who they align more with throughout the story. And then, there's no right or wrong, which is really kind of nice for this, but it's each person's their own opinion of how they view the work. Kind of informs them how they feel about it and who they side with and who they believe in as the characters. So this is really kind of fascinating because it's comes from a proposal that was based on the acquired characters from Charlton Comics, which DC Comics had bought in the early 80s. And they didn't quite know what to do with them, didn't know how to kind of incorporate them into the main DC universe. So they were kind of, futzing about, and Alan Moore came up with this proposal with the actual characters from Charlton. And the editor at the time actually really liked the concept and the proposal so much, but he knew that it would kind of damage the characters moving forward. So he asked him just to create brand new characters based on the the stereotypes, the character types, and then just go with it and do what you want, with little editorial interference, which was actually quite great for someone like Alan Moore to be able to do something kind of free reign, so to speak. And he got hooked up with Dave Gibbons, and they created this seminal piece of work. And of course, you can't speak about this work without mentioning John Higgins, who created the color palette for the entire series. And the muted colors are really, really understated, and it kind of creates a whole world of like that mid-'80s alternate universe, mid-'80s for the Watchmen, that is really brilliant. And it fits seamlessly, with the storytelling, with the art, and the coloring. So they just did a really fantastic job of collaborating on this piece. It was really, really amazing. One thing that Dave did a lot of was use a 9-panel grid, which kind of makes things very rigid, but it allows for a very complete reoccurring story to be told. So he used those panels to kind of get the story out, but in a way that allowed for repeated uses of art that kind of clarified things, or allowed, like, you see them happening, and then you have some of the text that kind of illuminates the story even more, which is really, really, really brilliant. So the cast of characters, this is an alternate universe of the 80s, one where superheroes kind of came about in the 1940s, 50s, and so they started with the Minutemen, who were the precursor to the Watchmen in the 60s, 70s. And what happened is we had an alternate universe where America won the Vietnam War, and Vietnam, was forever changed. And the Watergate break-in never got resolved, never got told, never found out. And so now we're living in a world in 1985 where Nixon is still president. And then he has a nice little fun throwaway line about the actor Robert Redford wanting to actually be a president. And so that's actually pretty interesting to be followed up on in the sequel, which is kind of interesting series on HBO. But it was really kind of fascinating to see these characters and, kind of get a glimpse into how things changed from our universe to this one to kind of get to where it was. Electric cars were, much more prominent. And they had one major superpowered man, and that was Dr. Manhattan. And this is basically his story and downfall. And it was really fascinating because he had got his powers through an accident, the intrinsic field separator, which killed him basically, but he was able to reconstitute himself, and it granted him superhuman abilities, godlike abilities, and Superman is American, so to speak, in this kind of world, and he is part of the later group of Watchmen, which include Silk Spectre's daughter, who takes on her name from the original team. We have Night Owl, who takes on his name from the original team. Rorschach, who is kind of a really fascinating character. He wears a mask with the black Rorschach tests and kind of, changes shape so you see what you want to see. He's a very black and white character, good, bad, these are the worlds, but he's very ruthless. Very paranoid. He has a lot of conspiracy theories, but doesn't make him wrong. And then you have Ozymandias, who was also part of the team, and he was the smartest man in the world, and he was also one of the richest men in the world. And then you have the comedian, who was a part of the original team, and he has a very complicated relationship with the heroes of this time period. He, as a part of the original team, tried to sexually assault Silk Spectre, the mother. Got found out, didn't happen, and then of course later on they actually have a consensual relationship, which is quite fascinating. The dynamics of how that works, but it was really fascinating. And Laurie, who is the new Silk Spectre, the daughter, she actually has a relationship with Dr. Manhattan, and she feels him pulling away, not quite there. She doesn't quite understand why he can't give her why he can't give her everything. And so it leads to challenges in their relationship. And so this story starts with the death of the comedian. And the happy symbol, the little happy smile symbol with the blood coming down from it, is very, obviously it's super famous. But that's the pen from the comedian, and then his blood coming off of it. So it's the mystery of his death kind of spurs the retired heroes, Silk Spectre, Night Owl, Rorschach, into kind of finding out what happened and why is this going on. And it's a really fascinating story. The plot isn't, overwhelmingly groundbreaking, but I think what is really great about it is that it allows the artist to tell a story and give a lot of room for interpretations to be discerned from the text and the art, and allows you to kind of deconstruct the superhero archetype, which is something that Alan was really interested in, to kind of give that kind of pause and think about and reassess, what are heroes, who are they, why do they wear a mask, who is it protecting, and those kind of elements and thoughts and questions permeate the entire series. What was actually kind of fun about it is this was also being told concurrently with a backup series called Tales of the Black Freighter, which was a pirate story, which was actually kind of interesting. Of course, you're reading it when you're first reading it completely, you're like, I don't understand what this has to do with anything. Why am I reading about this pirate story? And of course, the further you get along in the story, the more you kind of understand that there are quite significant parallels between the Black Freighter story and the plot in the Watchmen, which is really kind of fascinating to kind of go through it and see it as it's happening. Um, and that is one of those things that is really cool about it, because you get these kind of two stories in one, like really give you more flavor and more understanding. And the other thing that Alan Moore did, which I really appreciated, is what we would call data pages, but it was actually just supplementary material that was presented with each issue. It's kind of like backstories. You get like newspaper clippings or dossiers on some of the characters, and it kind of filled you in on the story and who they were without being kind of overwhelmingly dumped into the actual text. So it allowed for all this information to be given to the readers and the audience without having it to be so dense inside the actual comic itself. So this is a really fascinating. I really do love this story. I thought it was a really, really well done. The collection of it, you can find it anywhere. It's not going to go out of print, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on if you're the creator or not. But the story, where it takes place in 1985, and it's about how close Americans and the Soviets were to nuclear annihilation, and how the characters in this book decide to avert that, and how they come together or not and decide to solve the problem, and they come out with very different ways, and it's really fascinating. I don't want to spill a lot of the plot points and things that are in this, because I would like you to read it and kind of get your own opinions about it. I do think this is a groundbreaking piece of work. It's won awards. It's really brilliant, and it kind of set the stage for a lot of revisionist comics to be written after this, to kind of a different kind of eye on what makes a superhero and kind of deconstruct that notion. So really, really proud to have this in my collection. It's really great. I urge you to read it immediately if you haven't already. So let me know what you think about The Watchmen, the book, and I'll be back with more goodies for you. As always, it's all geek to us.